This is episode 542 on the 11th of July 2022. The last few days have been interesting in the world of sports. The overhyped Wimbledon to the Women's Hockey World Cup, which as always goes unnoticed because that's the nature of the psychotic Indian media who ignore most women's tournament and other such tournaments. But one tournament we are going to focus on is on the Money in the Bank pay-per-view event, which happened exactly in the way the Money in the Bank event happens. Starting with the ladder match. Now, this was a very interesting situation because you had relatively newcomers versus experienced individuals, the one who had been there for a while and had won such tournaments before. So it was the relatively newcomers in Liv Morgan, Raquel Gonzalez, Rodriguez, and Shotzi versus the experience of Alexa Bliss, Lacey Evans, Asuka, and Becky Lynch. Now, the expectation was that the likes of Bliss, Evans, Asuka, Lynch would win it because they have been there before, they've had their chances, and they have come close to winning this particular match. Now, this is closest to a Royal Rumble situation where the winner gets to choose or cash in on the champion and immediately become the champion. That's the slight difference between the winner of the Royal Rumble event, who has to wait till a particular event to challenge the champion, and the MITB ladder match winner who can immediately cash in as and when they find the champion vulnerable. We'll talk about that more. But a ladder match, especially a MITB ladder match, is very predictable because for the first 15-20 minutes, all the opponents do to each other is try to beat each other up as much as possible, try to maim the other so that they are incapacitated enough that one of them who is still not down can climb the ladder, grab the briefcase, and their career changes forever. So what do? They keep getting in ladders which get more dangerous as the match progresses. They do all kinds of stunts on the ladder, injuring themselves on the back, on the parts of their body which they will realize a few years from now might force them to retire early. They take all this in a manner because they know that they have to win the match. So for the first 15-20 minutes, all they are doing is using these ladders as a weapon and not as an opportunity to climb and win the particular match. And then all you need is one error by the others and the opportunity and the advantage to be taken by the eventual winner who climbs the ladder, makes sure that their opponents are not in the state of mind to climb the ladder and grab it. And when Liv Morgan went on to win this particular match, it was unexpected because that was the last person you would expect, because she was the last individual you would expect to win in a team full of generational talent like Alexa Bliss, Lacey Evans, Raquel Gonzalez, Rodriguez, Asuka, Lynch, Shotzi, who all were bigger and more powerful than Liv Morgan. But it wasn't surprising when this particular individual went on to win. And then something interesting happened after that, but we'll talk about that later. So this is how the predictable nature of the Money in the Bank ladder match goes. There are also temporary alliances permanent mistakes and variables, which means two individuals in order to take out the third individual team up, which means you would have seen all of them team up to take out Raquel Rodriguez because she was the tallest and the most powerful of all the opponents. Make sure that this particular wrestler is unable to get up to cash in on the opportunity, but it doesn't last long. That's why we call them temporary alliances, because it's only to take out the bigger opponent, and then they fight on the ladder, they fall from dizzying heights, and eventually one of them has to win it. It wouldn't have been surprising if someone else had won it, but it's what we call that phase, because there's always an opportunity next year. So the other remaining individual will obviously once again compete. It won't be surprising if the WWE management comes up with a heist and says that even if Morgan has won it and eventually did something spectacular, the other remaining women in the roster will get a chance. They will compete against each other, and the winner of that match will challenge Morgan for a championship opportunity. Who knows? They might go with this. Well, let's wait for that particular match to happen. Moving on, another interesting match between Lashley and Theory. Theory, who is seen as the chosen one, the protege of the chairperson of the company. It's not for the first time that such a protege has been brought out. Once upon a time it was Randy Orton. Before that it was The Rock. Triple H was in that chosen one category for a while. John Cena was in that favorite group for a while. Drew McIntyre went through that situation, but this seems a little different because of how this individual has come into the main roster, coming from the development NXT brand, and he was not that confident when he was in the NXT brand, teaming up with other groups who eventually semi-retired, and when he came he was still in that category of learning, and then suddenly he gets this opportunity to be spending time with the chairperson, the owner of the company, and things change. Then he gets a lot of matches which he goes on to win. He loses a few matches. So this was a very interesting situation. Now Lashley, who had been deprived of a world championship match post his concussion injury at the Elimination Chamber pay-per-view, since then he had been waiting for opportunities to get back in the championship fold. Though for me the WWE US Championship is the last thing I expected him to be happy with, but maybe it's the way they want it. Maybe it's a transition that he wins the US Championship and goes on to win a major tournament and challenges the World Universal Undisputed Champion for a match, because I've been looking forward to this. While everyone is excited about Lesnar versus Reigns, the rivalry which has been going on for a better part of 8 years, I would be excited about Lashley versus Roman Reigns if it ever happens. It has happened before, but this presents a unique circumstance. So what happened eventually? Lashley went on to win this particular championship match. It wasn't surprising, but there was a surprise which came later on. What was the surprise after Theory lost his championship? Well, I'll get into that later on, but he is now into this US Championship. He has won it. Lashley, he will be challenged by a lot of contenders, and that will be something which will be interesting to see as to how the entire thing plays out. So what happened after Theory lost his championship? It wasn't a day where he was feeling down. It was a day where he himself was surprised by the events that took place. I'll get into that later, but maybe this foray into a championship might get him a chance at the undisputed Universal Championship. You never know what is going on in the heads of the creative section of the WWE management. They might come up with something very interesting, they might come up with something which is shocking, but that's how professional wrestling works. It's all about shock and awe, and even the surprise that comes with it is all part of the story. Moving on, the first women's championship match. The original match was scheduled between Rhea Ripley and Bianca Belair, but Ripley found herself injured. Carmella went on to win a match in which she defeated 5 other wrestlers and challenged Bianca Belair, but it seems as if the WWE management wants Belair to be in that top zone for a long time. It was a close match. Emotions came into play. A lot of opponents are waiting. The winner of the women's MITB was also lurking around, but eventually Belair, using all her experience, went on to retain this championship, and it will be interesting as to how the WWE management gets her another formidable opponent, because some of them have been a little repetitive. So let's see how creative they get to challenge Bianca Belair for her championship match. Moving on, it was the time for the undisputed tag team championship. Usos did retain, but it was a controversial ending because it was a back and forth match. It was family business versus unfinished business, because if the Usos had lost this match, if they would have not had a good face to present in front of the undisputed Universal WWE Champion Roman Reigns. So they had to win it, and held by the referee, or an error by the referee, as the match came to a close. Everything that the Street Profits did had Usos reeling under pressure, and the Usos never looked like they would retain it. But despite having his shoulder up, the referee was blinded by the tag, by the pinfall position of one of the Usos, and he did not see the shoulder which was up. But unlike other sports where you have instant replay, where the instant replay can influence the decision later on, we have seen that in hockey where they take a review system to challenge the on-field umpire. Same thing happens in cricket, and controversially but rightfully it has been happening in soccer and football. I don't know about any other sport, but there is no question that an instant replay will influence the referee's decision. Once the match is over, they have to move on because they have a time set for a particular match. They cannot restart the whole match because it affects the incoming matches. Now the question becomes, which is the best tag team in the world, across the world of professional wrestling? I will let the professional wrestling fanatics answer this question. Is it the Young Bucks? Is it the Usos? Is it the Street Profits? Is it the New Day? Is it the FTR? Is it the Hardys? These are the ones who are currently there. There were a lot of them who were there before. You had the House Foundation and so many other tag team. You had the Rock and Sock Connection, a very unique but interesting tag team partnership. But in the current world, one who have won championships across professional wrestling world, irrespective of whether you are a part of AEW, WWE, Ring of Honor, TNA, whatever be your affiliation, which is the best tag team in the world? Is it the Young Bucks, pair of brothers, the Usos, a pair of brothers, Street Profits, individuals who have a lot in common, New Day, who have been doing this for the past decade, FTR, two individuals not connected by blood but connected by the love of the profession. Hardys, another pair of brothers. I leave it to the professional wrestling aficionados and fanatics to tell me who are they, why they are, because of the impact they have, because of how they have come into the world of professional wrestling, and how being a part of one company affects the professional wrestling world as far as the tag team world is concerned. I'll let you all answer that question. Once again, is it the Young Bucks? Is it the Usos? Is it the Street Profits? Is it the New Day? Is it FTR? Is it the Hardys, because they are currently the tag teams who have done well and tag teams who have been doing it for over a decade? There are a lot of new ones. We'll get to them, but these ones I want you to choose. It's a difficult answer. Even I have no answer. I've seen all of them compete. All of them are equally good. I would love to see where they all compete across the world of professional wrestling. Forget which particular company they are affiliated to, and if they can do that, it will be a very interesting tag team match for the undisputed tag team championships, irrespective of your company that you are affiliated to. Moving on, the second women's championship match. Here it was about mind games, submission maneuvers, and family business. So everyone knows Natalia is part of the Hart Foundation. Her uncles and her dad have been part of this business for a better part of couple of decades. Two individuals who were friends, who were sparring partners, but eventually they had to clash. So they became friends to foes. It became a question of which is the more deadly maneuver between sharpshooter and the armbar. The armbar eventually won because Rousey won via submission. But as I said, Liv Morgan had already won the MITB ladder match. So after the match, she comes in, cashes in, and secures the WWE SmackDown Women's Championship and wins it. So a very interesting situation again as to who will challenge this individual. Don't count out Rousey or Natalia and a lot of other women wrestlers who want to be part of this particular championship. So a very interesting situation. Will the WWE, like the men's championship, unify the women's championship? I have my doubt, because the name of the championship is such that Morgan, who went on to win the SmackDown Women's Championship, very subtly moved on to the SmackDown roster. Had she to win the Raw Women's Championship, she would have moved on to the Raw roster. But then Belair wouldn't have a championship in her hand. So that was something very important. And that is something we all have to look at. But the surprise of the evening, though I'm not surprised at all, because we all know how professional wrestling works. Anything is possible. Nothing in this profession is ever a surprise. It may come across as a surprise, as something ridiculous and ubiquitous, because it was a match between the experience of Rollins, McIntyre, Sheamus, Zayn versus the relatively new ones in Omos, Riddle, and Madcap Moss. And then something very interesting happened, which can only happen in this particular business and maybe in WWE only. Theory was added as a last minute surprise. He loses the US Championship and he is awarded with adding him to the ladder match. Of course, we all know who is his protege and who is guiding him. And when that person, the chairperson, the owner of the company, says he is being added to the match, no one will question. And that is exactly what happened. And not only was he added, he went on to win the men's MITB ladder match. Now this becomes very interesting because everyone's focus is on the Reigns Lesnar match in a couple of weeks' time. And we saw in a SmackDown episode where Theory played mind games. He did not cash in, but he left. He has occupied the space of Roman Reigns. Roman Reigns is aware that the Money in the Bank ladder match winner is lurking around. If it was Rollins or McIntyre or Sheamus, they may as well have cashed in because they would have used that experience. But Theory wants to go in a different direction. He will keep playing mind games because maybe it's something that his mentor has told him. Just be smart about it. Because if anyone else had won, they would have immediately tried to cash in and it could have gone a begging. So let's see what happens. Will Theory wait for the next couple of weeks like Rollins did and cash in at the SummerSlam event where everyone is eagerly awaiting in what is called the last match between Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns? I do not agree with that, but let's go with this theory that this may be the last match and it's a last man standing match, which means no disqualifications, no countouts. The first countouts may count because you have to make your opponent knocked out enough that the 10 count of the referee is in your favor. So they'll beat each other up all over the arena. That will be very interesting. That's how you expect it to be. And then no one was surprised when Lesnar was immediately given an opportunity to challenge Roman Reigns despite a 2-month break post the WrestleMania event. So it's going to be very interesting. Who between Lesnar or Roman Reigns will win? It won't make a difference if Theory cashes in. Will it be a successful cash in or will it be something which just goes a begging? One doesn't know. But the understanding is that if once that match ends, both of them will be spent, they will be tired, they will not be in that headspace to be cashed in. But Roman Reigns has already been cashed in twice, but that was Roman Reigns and this is the head of the table. It won't be surprised if after the match the Usos play a role in obstructing Theory winning and cashing in. So let's see how that goes. As far as the Lesnar situation is concerned, it looks unlikely that he'll be able to beat Roman Reigns because that's the way the WWE management wants this to play out. They want Roman Reigns in the company. They may have given him a different contract for a limited appearance, so they want him to keep the championship as long as possible. It's nearly been 2 years and it looks like as this 2 years has gone on for so long. So this ends episode number 542 on the 11th of July 2022. Stay tuned for the next episode 543 on the 13th of July 2022.